Welcome to the Breakthrough Success Podcast, helping you achieve that breakthrough you've always been looking for in your business. And now your host, Mark Guberti.
Hello and welcome. I am your host, Mark Guberti, and this is the podcast for marketers and small business owners who are looking for the breakthrough for their businesses. I'm very excited about this show. We are going to discuss building your ideal life, personal and professional, with Jim Palmer. Jim is an in-demand coach and founder of the Dream Business Academy, along with the Dream Business Coaching and Mastermind program. He's also the author of several books, including Decide, the Ultimate Success Trigger, which I recently got to read. It was phenomenal. And now it is my pleasure to welcome Jim to the show. Thanks for stopping by, Jim.
Mark, how you doing? Thanks for having me on.
I'm doing pretty good. When I first came across your book, I'll be honest, I thought it was going to be like one of those similar mindset books, but it was something well beyond that. And as I read the pages, I'm like, oh my God.
You know what's funny about that? So when I wrote the book, I fully knew it would fall under the classification of a mindset book, but I didn't. Every time I turn around, I see somebody else writing a mindset book. And literally when I was doing that, somebody else I know kind of in the coaching business wrote a book, and it was a mindset book, and it had a picture of like a brain with synapses firing. I'm saying, that's not my book. Although, you would best classify it as a mindset book, but it really is so much more than that.
I definitely agree. I would think of it more of a wake-up call book that's encouraging you to take action.
That's fair. I like that.
Thank you. So you are definitely pursuing your ideal life at this point, and some would say that looking at what you've done, we'll talk about that later in the show, you've hit your ideal life. I bet there's like that a bit of an entrepreneur who's like always trying to make everything better. But what got you interested in this journey to pursuing your ideal life?
Well, I mean, if you only got one shot at it, first of all. I always tell people, a lot of my coaching clients and people I talk to, especially if they're in procrastination mode, Mark, I say, listen, the sand is running out of the hourglass, and sooner or later the sand's going to run out. Or another way to say, you are on. This isn't a dress rehearsal. You're on the main stage right now, and the curtain's going to come down. And so get moving. I mean, the only thing that's really guaranteed that every single person on the planet has in common is we are all going to die at some point, and for some of us, it'll be sooner rather than later. And so it really is a wake up call. And with a lot of the entrepreneurs and small business owners that I talk to, a lot of them, I think, I sense that they're waiting. And, actually, if the title of my fifth book, Mark, was called Stop Waiting for It to Get Easier. But I truly think people wish it would get a little easier. Whether they say, well, maybe after the election, or maybe after this, or maybe after that, or maybe if I just get a little bit more revenue, then I'll invest, or I'll hire a coach, or when I, and people just get in the when I game. And, the real message about creating a dream business that'll support a dream lifestyle is when I is never going to happen if you don't start acting like right now. You got to make it happen right now.
It's interesting that you mentioned the when this happens and when that happens. And I know people listening to this, some of them are going to think, well, it's easier for you now to say that. But in your book, you mentioned that you woke up at 4 a.m. to stack shelves at Target. And you used extra time to pursue your business, which, I mean, that's really using every bit of sand in that hourglass, like to the maximum efficiency. What was going through your mind at that point when you've got the Target job, you're spending time with your family, you're working on your business, all while trying to get like enough sleep, if you even got enough sleep?
No, I didn't get enough sleep for about 8 years, to be honest with you. But you know what? I really learned I could function on 5 hours of sleep because I was so motivated. I was so driven. I could clearly see the business and the life that I wanted to have, and I was willing to sacrifice, I guess. I mean, I know full well. I have a couple doctors for clients, and you can't live without good sleep. Well, I get that, but for a while, sometimes you have to do what you're going to do. And as far as the target thing, when I started my business in October 2001, I fully expected, or I would say, I wanted it to be successful. I wanted to get clients right away. I wanted to be able to get moving, but it didn't happen for me, Mark. It took me a full year before I got my first client. And at the time, I had 4 teenagers at home. I had a mortgage and insurances, and food that people wanted to eat. So I decided to get a part-time job, but I got a job. Working. I get up at 4 a.m. and stock shelves. So I figured I can't work like 9 to 5 doing that, because where am I going to grow my business? I didn't want to work like in the evening hours, because I wanted to have a little bit of time with the family, and there were networking events at night. So that meant, well, I'm going to sleep less and just get up early and go do what I needed to do. And I remember, it was interesting is I remember I was probably there about 6 months. I guess you wear khaki pants and a red shirt when you work at Target. And I remember a friend of mine came in, and I didn't go to the Target an hour from me. I just went right down the street from where I lived. I remember a friend came in and said, "Oh, hey, Jim, how's it going? Blah, blah, blah." And he says, "How do you feel like working at Target?" Because I was a VP of marketing for this training company before I lost my job. And so, "How do you feel working at Target?" I said, "Well, it's not my favorite job, but I got to do what a man's got to do. My family wants to eat." So, I mean, that's the way I looked at it. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do.
You mentioned doing what you got to do for helping out with your family in any way that you can. And it's really obvious that you have strong family values and you care deeply about your family based on this interview and based on what I read in the book. And there are people who they have the job and they're pursuing their entrepreneurship on the side. And they're wondering, how can I spend time with my family, because they don't want this brilliant business idea that they're envisioning steal away from the family time. And then even if you have the successful business, your family doesn't like you, or there's not as much relationship, and you don't want to be in that type of mess. So what is your advice on making time for family?
It's important, and you got to do it. But here's going to be an unpopular answer for a lot of people who want to ride it's all important. When you start a business, it will be all consuming. So if you have, I guess if you have small children who won't necessarily miss you, that's okay. But if you have school age kids and there's concerts and ball games, you might want to rethink it, because what are you going to do if you're, let's say it's 5 o'clock and you've even been working since 6 a.m. and you're ready to go home, and one of your prospects calls and said, "Hey, I'm in town. I'd love to meet you. In fact, I'll pick you up. I'll take you to dinner. I really want to close this deal." And you had planned to go to your kid's soccer game or something, and this deal could be worth like 50 grand or whatever it's worth. It's just an important deal to you. What are you going to do? I mean, I can imagine some people that write certain books say, "Well, you absolutely say no. Say, my family comes first and I'll see you tomorrow." Well, what if the guy flies out in the morning? My point is, it is starting a small business is not for the faint of heart. You have to make tough decisions. And sometimes, and I would say possibly quite often, and especially in the early years, your family is going to take your family time is going to take a back seat. That's just the reality.
And I do see that whole idea that a lot of people, they really do go all in with their businesses. It is the entrepreneurial spirit, but at the same time, we do need to carve out time for our families. Now, when you started, it's not like you did Target and then on the side you were making some extra revenue with all the extra time you were spending on your business. In the book, you mentioned that your first 12 months of business are what you call revenue free, which was your way of saying you weren't making a lot of money. You weren't making any actually for your business during that time. And people, a lot of people say that you need several months in order to make some money for your business. It takes like 5 years for a profitable one. So what made you stay committed to your business, even though you're putting in all this work, but it's not amounting to any sales?
There were a couple things, Mark, in the early years. First of all, I really felt this is what I was called to do. I think what I went through with the unemployment and then, with cancer and things like that, I felt this is my turning point. This is what I was meant to do. And so I was going to do it. And I don't like failing. I mean, sometimes things don't always work out, but if I was going to do it, I'm going to do it. And I actually knew, I really felt in my heart that I was going to be successful. I really felt I was going to be very successful, but I didn't know when. And so every day and week and month that went by that I didn't get a client, I just kept thinking of the word ridiculous. How ridiculous would it be for me to quit now after I just put in 5 months? How ridiculous would it be if I quit now and I just started 8 months? How ridiculous would it be? I've been 11 months and that new client could be right around the corner. So that's how I got through it.
And they all were in the corner for you during those first 11 months. I mean, some people, they'll look at the revenue, they'll see it's small, but people are getting to know you at this time, and your revenue could literally be just around the corner.
That's right. You never know when that client's going to come in. That phone call is going to come in. You're going to get introduced to somebody, and so you just never know. So why would you quit? I mean, unless if you're not willing to stick it out, and I mean, there are nights when it is brutally hard. You probably cry yourself to sleep. You're thousands of dollars in debt. I mean, there are really tough times. But you know what? If you do make it, there's no better way to create wealth and freedom for yourself than being a small business owner. I mean, you could have a really nice, high-paying job, and maybe that's cool, or you do decent at you'll do reasonably well. You work really, really hard, and you get a 3% raise. Maybe next year you get a whopping 5%. I mean, nothing wrong with that. Not everybody's meant to have a business. Maybe you're just a paycheck employee type of person. That's totally fine. But if you want to do the dream business, go that route, then you got to be prepared to sow a lot of seeds, I guess.
Building a dream business, you mentioned that it does involve a lot of work, but you also want to delegate those tasks in order to create more time for yourself and pursue new opportunities. And your chapter, Delegate to Decide or Stay Small, that was a wake-up chapter for me because I delegate some of the tasks, but after reading that chapter, I felt like I need to be delegating more tasks than I'm currently delegating. However, there are people listening to this right now who they may feel bootstrapped right now, not ready to spend all this money hiring people to delegate their tasks to. What is the advice you would give to these people who they want to start delegating, but they feel like they have tight budgets?
That's bad thinking. That's a very there's poverty mindset and there's a abundant mindset. It will always feel like you're putting the cart before the horse when you are going to hire somebody. It sometimes feels like it's putting the cart before the horse when you're going to do anything, invest in yourself, join a coaching program, whatever it is. It will always feel like you're putting the cart before the horse. But you know what? Federal Express was started when Fred Smith bought multiple DC-9 jets. He hired pilots and co-pilots. He bought vans. He hired ground crews, delivery people. And he started his business losing millions of dollars. He didn't have the luxury of saying, I'm going to try this, and then if I get enough orders from people who want to ship a letter in a flat envelope from Detroit to LA, and then I'll start the business and hope they wait for me. That's not how business is done. That's not how it's created. And so it does feel like you're putting the cart before the horse. But once again, that's business.
One of the things I read about your book related to the abundance mindset is the power of zero. And for some of my listeners unfamiliar with the concept, if you have a goal like get 1,000 subscribers, you add an extra zero so that you're getting 10,000 subscribers instead of 1,000. So setting a bigger goal will basically give you that motivation to pursue it, and that motivation creates more effort. So, with the power of zero already mentioned, are there any more power moves that you utilize in order to accomplish your goals?
By the way, one of my coaching clients used that very goal this year, wanted to double the size of their business, and they came very, very close. I think they were like 2 or 4% away from hitting that, which is a humongous goal. And on one of our end of the year phone calls, this person was kind of bemoaning the fact that they missed the goal. And I said, "Excuse me one second, do you realize how big the percentage of your growth was? I don't care if you're 4% off your what you call your big BHAG, your big hairy audacious goal." So I love the power of zero. So instead of saying, "Look, I'm going to get 10 new clients this year," say, "I'm going to go for 100." And if you fall woefully short, let's say you miss it by a half, and you get 50 new clients instead of 10, you're so far ahead. So it's a good goal setting measure that you can definitely work to achieve it. But if you fall short of what I would call a times out of zero type goal, you got to be okay with hitting the extra yardage. So it's kind of funny. You just got to protect your mindset. That's what I'm saying.
It's great that you mentioned your mindset, because right now it's very obvious that you have a strong mindset, but you talk about how there was a certain point where you didn't have this strong mindset. And Milani is someone who you mentioned several times within your book, and she is the one who helped you finally decide that this was your time. So there are some people who are not really sure about, like, this is their time. They don't really see themselves as, like, this is my opportunity. So how did you finally decide that this was your time?
My time to do what, Mark? To start, or to really take my business to the next level?
To really take your business to the next level.
I've always wanted that, first of all. So it's not like I didn't want it. I wasn't looking for small growth or anything like that. My problem initially was that I was trying to get big growth without playing a big game. Do you know what I mean? And I think it was something that a lot of people do. Well, if I could just do X, then I could achieve Y. In other words, if I wanted to significantly grow my business, and especially at the time when I learned this very important lesson, I was really trying to grow my coaching business, but I wasn't really fond of speaking. I didn't want to do my own live events. I wasn't a fan of doing videos and stuff like that. There were things that were a little outside my comfort zone. Well, I finally, I remember this meeting I had with this very successful entrepreneur. He's actually a multi-million-dollar coach himself. And he knows me well, and he knows the things I was doing to grow, and he knows the things that I wasn't doing to grow. And he pulled me aside, Mark, and he goes, "Jim, let me ask you a question. What makes you think that you're entitled to the same level of success that your friends, peers, other people that you admire have, but you're not willing to do the things that they have done in order to get the business that they have? Explain how that works to me." And it was a real wake-up call, right? I mean, you could even see a coach, a basketball coach, saying to a player, "Explain to me how you think you're going to make it to the NBA, yet you're not willing to go out there and shoot 500 free throws in a row, or you're not willing to do this, that, the other thing. Explain to me why you think you're entitled to achieve a level of success that other people have, but you're not willing to do the things that they did and they do today to get to that position." It's wrong thinking to think that there are shortcuts. And that's really the wake-up call that I had.
So I like the whole idea of there being no shortcuts. And one of the stories you mentioned that indicates there are no shortcuts, but also at the same time your love for your family, is you mentioned the inspirational story about your daughter, where you actually have her pay to attend your mastermind.
Oh, yeah.
That was when I first read that, I'm like, what are you doing? But then I read it and I was like, oh, you made the right decision there.
I don't know if you've ever been in a position where you've just been given something and you might be appreciative, but then maybe there's a similar thing where you've earned the money and you bought it yourself, or it's a trip and you paid for it yourself. The thing about free advice is it's free, and things that are free do not have the same perceived value as something you pay for, right? And so when my daughter wanted to join the mastermind, I said, "Man, I'd love to have you. You're talented. It'll be great for you, but you're going to pay for it." And I forget exactly how I wrote it in the book, and she didn't like balk or anything. She goes, "Oh, okay." It was a little bit like that. But you know what? I pay her company to book me on interviews. Her name is Jessica Rhodes. She founded a company called Interview Connections. It might be how we got connected. Anyway, I pay her company to get me all my. She doesn't do it for free because I'm her father. And I have other team members. My internet guy, the guy that oversees all my websites and all the security and stuff like that, he's in my mastermind. He pays to be in my mastermind, and I pay him for his service. That's the way it goes.
That's pretty good, but I mean, I like how you're each paying each other because you could just give free access. And I see this where you get free access to content or free access to a Facebook group that's sort of like a mastermind, but then you don't really show up because you don't really feel that same level of incentive to show up. There's no skin in the game.
That's right. That's a great phrase. Skin in the game, man. That's what it's all about.
So to end the story about what happened with your daughter in the mastermind is she wanted to get more growth for her business. The first 2 months were a little slow. She asked you, how can I make 6 figures? And then you gave her advice. And then in July of that year, she made her 6 figures. So just in a few months, what advice did you specifically give her that we can utilize in order to grow our dream businesses?
I told her that I think without a shadow of a doubt, you could have a 6-figure business this year under one condition. And she said, "What's that?" I said, "You have to do everything I tell you to do without question." Because I've done it so many times, not only for myself, I've grown multiple 6-figure businesses. I've done it for literally, I don't know what the final count, how people in my coaching program, but I've done it dozens and dozens of times. And that's it. Here's one of the things. Entrepreneurs usually have healthy egos, and entrepreneurs might like to seek advice and to learn things, and they will hear a strategy or a technique or something, but then they'll say, "Okay, I see how that works for you, and it might have worked for other people, but my business is a little different, so I'm going to just take that idea and change it a little bit so I can make it my own." And they may not say that out loud, but that's what they're saying to themselves. They want it to be their idea, and that's just a load of crap. I mean, if you're more concerned with getting accolades, and I don't know from who, if you're an entrepreneur, you own the business. So if you're more concerned with stroking your ego or saying to people, "I did this on my own," that's not me. I'm more concerned with growing a business that provides the lifestyle that I want, helps support my family, helps us give back and support some really worthy causes. That's what I'm more focused on. I implement other people's ideas a lot. And so, yeah, stick your ego in the drawer if you really want to achieve a level of success. And by the way, if people find that hard to do, every time you pick up your phone and you want to go somewhere, like somebody texts you an address and you've never been there, what do? You go directions. Where do you want to go? And then you give the address and you trust somebody. You don't have to go find your own route there, right? So it's really no different taking directions from Siri or Google than it is taking direction from a business coach who has infinitely more experience than you.
And I also like the idea of coaching because the coach, in your case, you've gone through the whole process that one of your clients is in the middle of going through. So you can see where the client is going and then steer them in the right direction so that they achieve their 6-figure dream business.
Yeah. Yep. It's everybody's business is a little different. But you know what? One of the reasons I wrote the book Decide, Mark, is that it's not always a missing strategy. A lot of times the brand is not correct or the marketing is not correct, but really what happens is people have a hang up of some sort. It's, the great Zig Ziglar, the late great Zig Ziglar used to say, people need a checkup from the neck up. And it's really what's going on in your mind that's preventing you from doing certain things. It's not for a lack of skill or lack of talent or lack of ambition. It's usually from a lack of confidence.
So, in addition to mentioning your daughter's success, you also mentioned her wedding and having a cool YouTube video of you and her dancing. And you go into detail of how you had to spend all these days planning. So, basically, you attend to your family. Your business kind of got a backseat temporarily. And there are people who they're beyond the point where they have the target job in your case, and then they have the business on the side. But what is your advice on accelerating the business without losing sight of the people you care about? Because you talked about how people do that in the beginning, but what about when you've made it big time and you're trying to figure out how to stick around with your family still?
One of the reasons what I coined the whole phrase dream business academy, dream business coaching program, dream business coach is I truly want people to have the business of their dreams so that they can live the lifestyle that they want to live. I don't think people live to work. I think you work so you can live. And when you're a business owner, if you create the right kind of work, so to speak, you can live, the life that you want. So I right now, I feel very blessed that I do all of my coaching calls. I do all the interviews like I'm doing with you, Mark. I do them on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and I do not have to work on Monday and Friday if I choose not to. I don't feel guilty about that because I'll tell you the first 10 years of my business, I probably worked 20 to 25 hours or 20 to 25 years worth of regular working hours to be able to do that. In other words, I feel like I paid my dues. Now, it's not just a dues. It's not just, saying, oh, I worked this many hours, but it's putting yourself in a situation where you can now you have created a business. So, like just this past weekend, when my last call was over Thursday, I was pretty excited because first thing Friday morning, my wife and I got in the car. We drove up to New England and spent the weekend with one of my daughters and two grandkids. So I don't even have to clear my schedule. I don't have to rearrange anything. I am off on Monday and Friday.
I know some people think that is such a beautiful schedule. And I love that ability to just carve out 2 days of the week. Or do you do Saturdays and Sundays also? Do you take off on those days or those work?
Yeah, I don't work Saturday and Sunday. Now, I say I don't work. Now, one thing about being an entrepreneur, you never turn your brain off. But no, I'm not sitting at my desk. I'm usually on my boat or doing something. But no, yeah, I don't. It's kind of like a 4 day off, 3 day on type thing for most of the year.
So this schedule basically gives you a lot of freedom, and when you do work, I can imagine you're feeling really charged up, and you've done hundreds of interviews at this point. You've had so many clients. You've gotten to meet a lot of different people and advise them on how to move their businesses forward. And I'm sure that you've seen people hold themselves back by the limitations that they're creating for themselves. So what do you see as that one thing that holds most people back from their potential?
It's fear, which is it's a big catch-all umbrella type of phrase because there's a lot of different types of fear. But if you had to pick one thing, see a lot of people say fear of failure, fear of success, fear of this, fear of that. What it all boils down to, it's fear of really being ridiculed, mocked, laughed at, or ashamed. I don't want my family, my friends, my brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, friends, neighbors. I don't want those people knowing that I failed. And that prevents a lot of people from pulling the trigger in the first place, but it also prevents people from taking the additional risk. So there's a risk when you initially start a business. And let's say you even achieve some success. Maybe you generate sales of $50,000, $60,000, $80,000. But to get to six figures or multiple six figures, you've got to reinvest in the business, usually with more marketing and some other things. And in order to do that, Mark, it usually requires an investment or doing something that's outside your comfort zone and doing those things are what people hesitate. And I speak from experience. When I wrote my first book in 2009, it took me 18 months. It only took me a year to write it. It took me 6 months before I had the courage to actually launch it, because I spent 6 months going through that book and making sure there were no typos. Turns out there's a ton of typos in there. And, what I was worried about was, my goodness, I'm going to have a book, an actual book with my name and my picture on it. There better not be any mistakes. Well, the fact of the matter is nobody's perfect. And even though I hired a professional editor, there were still a couple things, because nobody's perfect. And so that prevents a lot of people from acting, whether you're doing a podcast like you're doing. Maybe somebody, I know I coach some women, I don't want to do that. I think I got a silly voice. It doesn't matter. If you provide good value, people will judge you from the value that you provide, not the imperfect way in which you provide it.
So we're about 30 minutes into this episode. I've enjoyed myself a lot so far. I'm getting a lot of insights. I know my listeners are getting the same amount of insights and they're enjoying it, but I've been on the receiving and giving ends of these types of conversations. And I know that it's easy to feel charged up for a day or two, but then head trash or like negative self-talk and inaction can derail people's efforts after they hear this interview a few days later, or after they go to that big event that motivates them. What is your advice for keeping that motivation and going to action instead of trying to go away from it?
One of the things, there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot in that answer or the question, Mark, but one of the things that I think helps is if you personalize the reason or the bottom line effect of you not doing something. So early on, when I didn't want to be a speaker and travel around and talk in front of 200 people or 400 people, I didn't want to do that. And then early on, when I didn't want to do videos and I didn't want to do my own live events and all these other things, as a business owner, the difference is you are the owner of the corporation or the business. If you choose not to, if somebody asks you to come speak at their event, and you say, no, I'm kind of busy, I'm traveling, and you just politely turn it down, there's no consequence to you that you can't make okay in your mind. So as a business owner, I say, well, I don't want to be a speaker, so I'm not going to speak. And I don't really get called down the end of the hall and the boss's office and said, hey, Palmer, get the hell out there and speak, right? So, because I'm that guy. So, when you're a business owner, you got the best boss and you got the worst boss. Now, how do you get over that? Well, you got to personalize the result other than you saying it's okay. So for me, when my girls were in high school and my business was not growing at the degree that I wanted it to grow, I envisioned, I knew they both, I had twin girls, so they're the same age. I knew they both wanted to go to school, college. I knew they'd probably both get married someday, and doggone it, I had always envisioned I'd be able to at least help my girls go to college. And so far, we're not going to have the money to do that if I can't get this business, to the next level. And so, see, that's what I mean. I personalized the cost to my inaction, and that really made me want to fight harder for my girls than I was willing to fight for myself.
That's beautiful. Wow.
Thank you. Thanks.
You've learned a lot of lessons on your journey. That personalizing the issue is a really big one, but is there another really big lesson you've learned throughout your journey?
Well, as an entrepreneur, I would say one of the big lessons is you will earn significantly more income for who you are compared to what you do. So it's really not about the deliverable. It's really more about how you are positioned and how you are seen in the marketplace. That's the most important thing.
Thank you for giving us that good lesson for us entrepreneurs out there. Now, I like to close all of my episodes with having the guest give out an inspirational quote that they could think of, and then after that, I'll let everyone know where they can find you on the web.
Well, here's a simple one. Gross is for vanity and net is for sanity. So it doesn't matter how much you gross, it matters how much you keep. I know some people who were in the seminar business that can say, listen, I gross $1 million a year, but they pay so much for the hotels and the meeting space that their costs were $950,000. So they can say, yeah, my business takes in $1 million, but they only made 50 grand. And I know businesses that might generate $200,000 and they keep 150 of it. So gross is for vanity and net is for sanity.
That's a good one. So thank you for taking the time to be on this podcast. Just basically for people who want to learn more about Jim Palmer, get access to his books, visit his website, where do they go?
They go to getjimpalmer.com, www.getjimpalmer.com. All
right, Jim, it was a pleasure to have you on my podcast. Thank you for taking the time to stop by.
It's my pleasure, Mark. I wish you all the success.
I thoroughly enjoyed that interview. I remember reading Jim's book for the first time and realizing that I always have a choice to make. I must decide amongst giving up, continuing, or giving it my all. This book was a strong wake-up call for me, and I hope this episode was a strong wake-up call for you too. If you forgot to take notes, then don't worry. We've got you covered with the show notes. Visit markguberty.com/E27 for those. You can ask your questions over there, which I'll be more than happy to answer. To never miss an episode, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on whatever player you are using. If you are a regular listener and haven't done so already, I would greatly appreciate it if you could give this podcast a review or a rating. Two ways you could do this are through markguberty.com/iTunes or markguberty.com/Stitcher. That ends this episode. Don't forget, dream big, achieve greatness, and unlock your potential today. How does over 100 retweets per day sound to you? My free ebook, 27 Ways to Get More Retweets on Twitter, has you covered. I use the methods within this ebook to get over 10,000 retweets every single quarter. To learn more and get access to this free resource, visit markguberty.com/retweet.
This podcast is a production done by Mark Guberty. For more insights, head on over to markguberty.com.